On January 24th, 2006, Leslie Moonves, then chairman of the CBS Corporation, and Barry Meyer, the man in charge at Warner Brothers Entertainment, held a joint news conference to announce some big news. That news was that their respective television networks, UPN, aka United Paramount Network, and the WB, were struggling financially and would merge to form a new channel called the CW. With that announcement, the network that had ushered in a golden age of black TV was over, a little more than 10 years after it started. UPN had faced the same fate as other black-centric television channels before it, including the WB and BET. But why was UPN created in the first place, and how did it end up in such dire financial straits? This is the story of the rise and fall of UPN, and what happened to the network that became a mecca for black TV. Launched in 1995, UPN was initially geared toward young white male viewers, with early programming including shows like Star Trek Voyager and WWE wrestling broadcasts. The channel initially carried programming only on Monday and Tuesday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern and Pacific Time. Other early UPN programs included the action series Nowhere Man, starring Bruce Greenwood, The Sentinel, and Moesha, a sitcom starring R&B singer Brandy Norwood. Of the network's early offerings, only Star Trek Voyager, Moesha, and The Sentinel would last longer than one season. As a result of the lack of viewership, UPN operated in the negative and had lost $800 million by 2000. But we'll talk more about that later. UPN completed its primetime and nightly expansion in the 1998-99 season with Thursdays and Fridays as the last nights of programming to be added to the network's evening slate. That season saw the debut of The Secret Diary of Desmond Pfeiffer, a sitcom set during the Civil War that centered on a black English nobleman who becomes the valet to Abraham Lincoln. Even before its premiere, the series was riddled by controversy and protests from several African-American activist groups and some advertisers for its perceived lighthearted take on American slavery in the 19th century. The LA chapter of the NAACP even picketed outside Paramount Studios 1 week before the originally scheduled pilot episode. Despite the publicity Desmond received from its controversial subject matter, the series suffered from low ratings. The first episode, which aired on October 5th, 1998, placed 116th out of 125 programs aired during that week. The show was canceled after 4 episodes. Even with this red zone fumble, UPN would soon become known for its Monday night block of groundbreaking black sitcoms, including Moesha, The Parkers, Half and Half, One on One, and Girlfriends, each which had a majority black cast and production team. One of the reasons behind the shift in programming was Tom Noonan, who joined UPN as an executive VP of programming at the network in 1997. Later, he was appointed president of entertainment in 1998. Noonan had been at the Fox network in the 1980s, where he had a reputation for developing shows by African-American writers who wrote classics like In Living Color, Martin, and Living Single. Other black-centric sitcoms from that period, including The Cosby Show and its spinoff A Different World, were largely created by white showrunners. Noonan figured that shows with actual black production teams would better resonate with black audiences. Quote, by the time I got to UPN, Fox had started to pivot away from shows like Martin and Living Single. So suddenly there was this opening again, Noonan said. When I arrived, Moesha was already on the air, so I built on that, adds Noonan, who also helped develop the Source Hip Hop Music Awards for UPN during his tenure. Quote, it wasn't just an effort to embrace an audience that hasn't been embraced by the other channels. It was to encourage that audience to lead us with inspiration and ideas and in directions that none of us could predict, end quote, Noonan would go on to say. Kelly Edwards, who ran UPN's comedy division, noted that UPN shows tended to be actor-centric, meaning they would often capitalize on a celebrity's pre-existing star power and fan base. The network's earliest and most successful example of this approach was Moesha, which starred Brandy, who was hugely popular as a singer at the time. UPN also cast celebrities Monique, Eve, and Tyra Banks as series regulars or hosts across their respective shows in an effort to cash in on their big audiences. UPN shows would go on to feature guest appearances from black cultural juggernauts such as Maya Angelou, Usher, Kobe Bryant, and Mary J. Blige. As I mentioned, UPN had developed a number of shows featuring black casts. The Parkers, a spinoff of the show Moesha, and about a mother and daughter who attend the same junior college, will usher in Monique's acting career, which would eventually lead to her Oscar-winning performance in the movie Precious. Quote, what was beautiful was when I walked on that set and I saw all that blackness. That was my introduction to Hollywood, Monique has said. Quote, I took pride in that. The Parkers was a massive rating success, ultimately having enough episodes to reach syndication. Another hit for UPN was the sitcom Half and Half, which premiered September 23, 2002. Producer Yvette Lee Bowser would say about Half and Half that the show just made sense. It felt like a real black family, and a situation some black people might actually experience. Rachel True, who starred as Mona on the show, will recount that she found it rewarding to be working with a black female producer. Because of its programming, UPN had been praised in the past for depicting alternative family dynamics, like the relationship featured in the series One-on-One, which starred Flex Alexander and Kyla Pratt as a single father and his daughter. In its brief existence, UPN launched and nurtured the careers of black professionals in the entertainment industry. Mara Brock Akil began as a writer on Moesha and went on to create her own show, Girlfriends, and then spin off The Game. When pitching Girlfriends, Akil was inspired by the popularity of Sex and the City, but felt the black female perspective was missing. Other notable UPN programs during the network's existence included WWE SmackDown, which had a primary audience that was 25% African American. The network also showcased America's Next Top Model and In the House, which was picked up by UPN after the show was canceled by NBC. Homeboys in Outer Space was a short-lived science fiction fantasy sitcom that aired on UPN from 1996 to 1997. The series starred comedian Flex Alexander as an astronaut who drove around space with his pal in a half lowrider, half 18-wheeler vehicle that had wings. E was a romantic comedy that aired on the network and starred the rapper turned actress of the same name. SmackDown and America's Next Top Model would be two of the most popular shows on the network during each year the shows aired. Some black executives at the network, though, would notice that in the mid-2000s, faith in the black TV star began to erode. During this period, Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Roswell were both purchased by UPN, and Veronica Mars was developed for the network in its final years as part of an eventual programming pivot. Rachel True remembers what she describes as segregated press junkets for UPN sitcoms. The black shows were lumped together and there was a separate promo day for shows like Buffy. While actors in the latter group of shows were giving sushi and salads, quote, "We got buckets of fried chicken. It was insane," end quote, True says. Pinckney believes the decision to merge UPN out of existence came down to ad revenue. Quote, "Ultimately, you want the most dollars that you can get for your ads," end quote, she says. Though UPN's black-led scripted shows, which by the end of UPN's run included Eve, All of Us, and Everybody Hates Chris, were largely popular with audiences, advertisers were evidently less inclined to pay top dollar to support shows targeting black viewers. Simultaneously, black viewership of UPN's black-focused shows began to decline around the mid-2000s. 5 of 6 black-centric comedies, which aired on Monday or Tuesday, saw viewership go down by at least 10% in the 2005 season. CBS researchers suspected a change in Nielsen's methodology was to blame for the decrease in viewer numbers among the black population. The Nielsen Company had changed its pool of participating families to label more citizens of Caribbean island descent as black, though they're primarily Spanish-speaking and often have different viewing habits than American-born blacks, according to researchers. 5 years after beginning programming, UPN had racked up more than $800 million in losses, with an executive at UPN during the time would hypothesize that there was just more of a desire for shows that might have a young adult emphasis, which ended up translating to shows predominantly targeted toward young white women. In 2018, multicultural viewers made up 35% of television watchers. Advertisers, however, only spent 5% of their budget advertising to this group. The network got rid of all the comedies and just became strictly a drama landscape, another executive would say about the mid-2000s transition period for the network. A lot of comedy people ended up having to shift into drama, or they just dropped out altogether. UPN's Monday night lineup for more than half a decade was a golden era as it relates to black presence on TV, a black producer at UPN will go on to say. Quote, "When we were shooting Moesha, you used to see all these black kids who were starring in TV shows come over and hang on the set when they were shooting, and those of us who were older would just remark that they didn't know how special this was. This had never happened before in the history of TV, period," end quote. By the mid-2000s, UPN had an estimated audience reach of 85.98% of all U.S. households, equivalent to more than 91 million households, but still operated in the negative. The CW, which was formed between the leaders at UPN and the WB, was intended to merge UPN's diverse and creative programming with the WB's profitability. Yet years after its creation, the CW has yet to turn a profit. It is now up for sale and being shot by its corporate owners Viacom, CBS, and Warner Media. Meanwhile, UPN shows have started to pop up on streaming services like Netflix. Per the Wall Street Journal, the CW isn't profitable by itself, but Viacom, CBS, and Warner Brothers find value in the TV shows they produce for the network, especially when the shows find success on streaming platforms like Netflix. Viacom, CBS, and Warner Media also have their own streaming services, Paramount Plus and HBO Max respectively, that can stream CW programs. Still, most of CW's revenue has come from selling its scripted originals to streaming services and international networks, so I'm not sure how the network will make money if they stop selling their own shows. What's really bothersome, though, is that black viewers and black shows as a whole garner less revenue from advertisers and thus less profitability because the demographic they attract is less desirable, even though black people as a group are among the most loyal TV viewers. It's no wonder that UPN ended up failing when you realize that the network intentionally moved away from what made it successful, celebrating black talent and appreciating its black audience. Well, this concludes my look into the rise and fall of UPN and what happened to a treasured harbinger of black TV. If you appreciate this story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Of course, there's more content to come. While you're at it, hit the like button if you used to watch UPN or you watch the CW now. And then leave a comment and let me know what other companies and people you want me to talk about on my What Happened series. Until next time.